What's up, everybody? Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and we're going to bring in the year 2023 with a custom commander build from a very familiar customer. So this build is a request from the person who also requested and receives the Grand Arbiter Augustin deck. So I'm very familiar with this customer. She's a very lovely woman. I've said that many times during the Grand Arbiter deck build video. So this request actually is one of two, and I'm still building the second deck, so we'll get to that eventually. But let me go over what the request was. So Graveyard Recursion was the theme here. They wanted something, or she wanted something that was a little more unique compared to Grand Arbiter, so we came up with Muldrotha. For those of you that saw my original Muldrotha build deck, it's an hour long, and I didn't really know how to do it then because this was a different type of build. So this one's going to be shorter and more to the point, and I'm going to go over everything with you right now. So let's get started. So Muldrotha, if you don't know anything, really good commander. She's one of the best. So she's 3 colors, blue, green, black, 3 of any. 6/6. She's an elemental avatar that really has a good ability. She has, during each of your turns, and it's only during yours, you can't do it during an opponent's turn, you may play a land card or cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. And if a card has multiple instances of a type, you get to choose which one you want. So, again, just like my build, this will be a toolbox build, but on a budget. The budget was the same as Grand Arbiter, $150. And let's go over what we got. You're going to notice a lot of things here. Almost everything, and I say almost everything, is going to be a permanent here that has either a sack ability or an enters the battlefield ability or some type of ability. So let's get started with the lands. Always start with the lands. And this is where some of the money is. I tried to make this so that every land can come into play on taps for her. So obviously we start with Command Tower. We're in a 3-color deck. It's a custom build, and with the custom builds, I delve into my own personal stuff. So Command Tower is an option, the best option I could come up with, and it's still budget. Opulent Palace. So this one does come into play tapped. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. When it's tri-lands, they all come into play tapped, but it does what we need to do. I got some shock lands and some check lands in here. So the Watery Grave and Drowned Catacombs are the blue-black ones. I got Overgrown Tomb and Woodland Cemetery for the black-green ones, and I got Breeding Pool and Hinterland Harbor for the blue-green ones. Ghost Quarter, because I'm going to also continue the budget version of the theme that I had in my deck, where there's a mini sub-theme of land destruction. So I got Ghost Quarter and Encroaching Wastes. And then Roadside Reliquary was a new one that I'm going to add to my version when I update it, which will happen eventually. I swear I will get to it, and I'll make the video much shorter than an hour. But it's good. It comes into play untapped, adds a colorless mana to your mana pool, or it can tap to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. And then you can pay 2, tap it, and sack it. And you can draw a card if you control an artifact, and then draw an additional card if you control an enchantment. This deck is going to have plenty of both. Same thing as my build, Glacial Chasm, because you can prevent damage coming into you. And then you have every turn you can avoid the cumulative upkeep costs, like I've explained in my video, or my deck's video, so you can continue using it. Now, the sacrificing land is very, it's a very big downfall if you keep doing it, but you should be able to keep up with some of the other stuff in here that I have, so don't worry about that. And then, to keep it on the budget, I had to make everything else just swamps, forests, and islands, because lands are the most expensive part of most decks. So, if you need to know the exact amount that I put in here, I'm going to have the link to the deck list for MTG Goldfish in the description. Ramp section is going to be a lot different. Normally, when I'm in green, I like to use spells. When I'm in Muldrotha, I hate to use spells. I'm going to use as many different permanent types as I can. So most of them sack to do something, so you can play them over and over again. As far as the way that I did it for my deck, I kind of copied it a little bit. So I got a Soul Ring in there, and yes, it doesn't sack, but if somebody wants to destroy it, you can go ahead and play it again. So it's kind of a dissuasion of sorts for them to destroy, because you can just play it again. And an Arcane Signet, because again, you're in 3 colors. They're the only 2 permanents that don't sack as far as this section goes. Wayfarer's Bauble, as you can see, it sacks itself to go search for a basic land and put it into play. And that's one of the reasons why I actually played a lot more basic lands in this deck, is because most of the stuff that goes in searches for lands, minus 1 or 2 cards, only goes search for basics. So Expedition Map is one of the ones that just gets a land card. So if there's some special ones and she wants to upgrade it, she can. There are a lot of non-basics out there that you can probably use for this deck that would make it a lot better. But again, I'm on a budget. Burnished Heart, not the greatest card in the world. However, it does everything you want. It goes and gets 2 basics, sacrifices itself so it can be played again later, and is a creature for blocking. So Sakura Tribe Elder, same theory here. You can sack it to go search for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Fertilid doesn't sack itself, but for the most part, if you take the last counter off, it kind of sacks itself. And then you can go search for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. You have my Elder, back in the day, was the king of basic card advantage. It's a 30 cast 2/1. When it dies, you can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them in your hand, and then you can pay 2 to sack it to draw a card. So you draw a card, get 2 basic lands. It's a 3-card swing, 3 for 1. So it's nice. Font of Fertility, it's the enchantment. So creatures, artifact, and then enchantments. So I tried to cover as many different permanent types as I could. So Font of Fertility does it too. It goes and it sacks itself to go get basic lands, put them on the battlefield. Colony Heart Expedition, it doesn't sack itself immediately, and you can't control it for the most part. But I mean, you kind of can because you're playing lands when you need to. And Omen of the Hunt. So those are the cards that I've chosen for this on the budget that I had to go ahead and use for Muldrotha because they are all permanents. The creature section is going to, okay, we're in a toolbox build. Almost everything in this deck is going to be a utility for the most part. So the creatures are all going to be utility stuff. There will be some surprises here and there, and that's at the end when I go over like win cons and combos and stuff. But the most important thing is each one of the creatures has to sack itself in some way to do a benefit for you. The most popular for Muldrotha is Spore Frog. Basically, it's Fog on a stick. Caustic Caterpillar. So the next couple ones are going to be utility as far as destruction, targeted removal. This goes after an artifact or enchantment. The Outland Liberator goes after an artifact or enchantment. It actually also flips over, and then you can do it still here. And then whenever it attacks, you can do it as well. So not bad. The Nightbound, Daybound doesn't really work so well. It's not the theme of this deck, but it can work. Same thing with Thrashing Brontodon. It also goes after an artifact or enchantment. Acidic Slime doesn't sack to do it. Here's the good thing about Acidic Slime. It doesn't go after just an artifact or enchantment. It actually also goes after a land. So it helps reinforce that sub-theme of land destruction. It has Death Touch itself, so it's a great blocker because you're obviously going to use it as a blocker to kill something attacking you and then recast it again with Muldrotha later. Creature removal, so Bone Shredder goes after a non-artifact, non-black. It's not the greatest one, but it still can hit a lot of things. And it sacks itself, so you can play it again. Plague Crafter, I got a couple of guys like this where they come into play and everybody sacks something, and obviously you're going to sack Plague Crafter and then replay it. Ravenous Chupacabra is the best of the bunch when it comes to targeted creature removal because it goes after any creature an opponent controls, not just a non-color, specifically black when it comes to black removal on creatures. Shriek Maul, another one, non-artifact, non-black. It evokes, so it will sacrifice itself. I've got counter magic on sticks, if you will. So Siren Storm Tamer sacrifices itself to counter a spell or ability that targets creature control. It kind of helps protect Muldrotha. Void Mage Prodigy, you can sacrifice a wizard to counter a spell. Here's the funny thing. It itself is a wizard, so it's kind of like its own counter spell. So keep that in mind. There are 2 more wizards in here, so you can use these as well. Daring Apprentice is another one. Sacrifice it to counter a spell. You get the theme here. Flanelendra, also a wizard. Sacrifice her to counter a non-creature spell. Has Persist. The good thing about Persist, with this, that means you get a free, not using Muldrotha's ability to cast it because it'll die, and then come back, and you'll be able to use it again. And then, when it dies the second time, you can cast it with Muldrotha's ability. Eternal Witness, this one doesn't sacrifice itself in any way, but I'm sure you'll find a way to get it to die. And then you can, it's actually like, if Muldrotha's not on the field, you can still get some things back when you cast her. It's not the greatest as far as the comparison between Muldrotha and Eternal Witness, but at least it's a little helpful. Muldrifter is card draw on a stick, and of course it sacrifices itself because you evoke it. Tormod's, so Tormod's in here for some defensive purposes only. But if a win con comes out of it, that's great too. So you can actually end up swarming the board. Tormod's great. I had an actual precon built for Tormod himself. But in this deck, he works great. So whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So with that, you cast one spell at a time because you're casting permanents. So the stack has to be empty. So each instance that you cast will count to create a 2/2. So you can actually create a lot of 2/2s with this guy. And then we've got not really... How do I put this? It's not really tutoring. It's kind of like tutoring into the grave. Violent Tumor. So Death Touch, again, really good to have defenders that can absolutely kill whatever it's blocking no matter what, because you want it to die so you can recast it. When you do cast him, you can search your library for a card and put it in your graveyard. Same thing with Gravebreaker Lamia. Same, has lifelink, doesn't have Death Touch. It's 4/4, so it's got a good power toughness. It makes... You can go search your library for a card, put it in your graveyard, and then it says whenever spells that you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast, reducing costs for your stuff. And that's kind of important because Muldrotha is expensive and casting a lot of permanents is expensive, so anything that can reduce that cost is good. I'm going to say utility enchantments. They're everything in here is utility because it's a toolbox. So we got card draw and scrying, if you will. Omen of the Sea, Font of Fortunes, Compulsion. Actually, Compulsion's good too because it helps fill your graveyard as well, so you can recast stuff. Because remember, you got to think of Muldrotha as having your hand and then having your graveyard as a second hand. So you can always be able to cast things that you discard later. And then, of course, you can sack it itself to draw cards. Seekers of the Dead, so again, doesn't sacrifice itself, but it forwards the deck. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. And that's important here. There's a lot of card draw stuff in here, and I'll explain that when I get to the win cons. Vessel of Nescency. I don't remember if I have this in my version or not, but I want to put it in there if it isn't. So it's 1 green and 2. You sacrifice it, and you can reveal 4 cards on the top of your library. And then put an artifact, a creature, enchantment, a land, or a planeswalker, or basically every permanent type for the most part, from among them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. And then, of course, because of how many different types of stuff that you're going to have in your graveyard, you'll be able to cast them later, just because Muldrotha allows it. Seal of Doom, so enchantment, targeted removal. Oubliette. So Oubliette's actually really, really good. Oubliette's actually one of those prison enchants that makes a difference. And when I say that, I mean most of the prison enchants, you can get around by sacrificing the commander. With Oubliette out, they can't do that. It phases it out, so it doesn't exist. It's just stuck there. So then they have to have enchantment removal. So Oubliette's probably one of the best prison enchants for commander printed ever. And of course, it was reprinted, but it was printed way back in, I think, 93 or 94. And they didn't even have commander even dreaming about commander being a thing back then. The Eldest Reborn, so again, it sacrifices itself after the third phase here. And then, of course, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, which is really good. It's good for removal. Each opponent then discards a card, which is, not really the greatest, but the last thing is what it does. So put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and it can be anybody's, not just yours. Witness Protection, another prison enchant that makes the creature lose all abilities and become a green-white citizen creature token with 1/1. That's a 1/1 named legitimate business person. So the problem here is that it's not like with white, where you have like Darksteel Mutation that makes it indestructible, so the only thing they can do is sacrifice it to get it back into their command zone to recast it. So that's the only problem with not having white in here, but it does a job. I like locking up people's commanders. This is one of the ways. Oubliette was the other one. Lunar Force, here's something interesting I'm trying. I'm going to have her get back to me on how it's working. So a lot of people don't like to play these things. There are two of these in here that say, they're enchantments that say whenever an opponent casts a spell, sacrifice Lunar Force and counter that spell. However, this next one is Hesitation, which is if any spell, so your spells too, are played, you sacrifice Hesitation and counter it. So I'm trying to use these as counter spells that are permanents that are not on creatures because I kind of wanted to diversify that idea a little bit. And the good thing is Lunar Force doesn't matter for you. You can cast away. With Hesitation, keep in mind, you want it to be the last spell you cast for your turn, and it may stall people a little bit, or they may just use it to, may use fodder to use it as a counter and get rid of it, so they can do the real thing they want to do, but that ties up people a little bit, and that's a good thing. And then you can recast it anytime you need to from your grave. Seal of Primordium, so non-creature enchantment removal. I needed to diversify everything out as much as I could, so Seal of Primordium. Wizard class does not sacrifice, but does something you need. There are a lot of things in here that allow you to draw cards, so having no maximum hand size is probably the key here for what you want to do. And then when it becomes a level 2, you draw more cards, so making that no maximum hand size even more relevant. And then the other one doesn't really do anything, so you don't really have to put it on level 3, but whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. That is only relevant for if you want creatures that you do have in play that are important, that don't sacrifice, like Muldrotha herself, to be bigger so that they can block more stuff and survive. And also, some targeted removal relies on what their power and toughness is. Now, she's already a 6/6 to begin with, so she's pretty beefy. But sometimes you just need them to be more. And you may even be able to commander damage somebody out with that. Something else I'm trying new. Legacy's Allure. Legacy's Allure is an interesting one. It's an older card. They don't do this anymore. 2 blue. During your upkeep, you may put a counter on it. And then you can sacrifice it to permanently gain control of target creature with power equal to or less than the number of counters on Legacy's Allure. Stealing commanders, stealing big baddies, just put it out there, let the counters go, sacrifice it at an opportune time, like when somebody casts their commander, steal it, you now control it, and unless they have a sack outlet, it's yours until you want it to go away. So I wanted to try some new stuff. Elephant Grass, you'll notice if you did watch my original Muldrotha video, is another addition that I put in both. I like it. It's actually one of those ones where it's not as monetarily expensive as a Propaganda, or the white one, I can't remember its name, but it does the same thing for the most part, but it has cumulative upkeep, so it kind of sucks in a graveyard recursion style deck because you can't keep the upkeep up. However, in Muldrotha, you just let it die, recast it, it's only 1 green. The difference here is that black creatures cannot attack you, and non-black creatures cannot attack you unless the controller pays an additional 2. So the addition here is that black creatures can't even come at you. That stops things like the Dragon, all those 5-color commanders. This actually makes it so they can't come after you unless they have some kind of enchantment removal, so this is key. Crawling Sensation, another new thing I wanted to try. At the beginning of upkeep, you may mill 2 cards, and then whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, for the first time each turn, put a 1/1 green insect token onto the battlefield. So creating more tokens to help block some of those, attacking style, the aggro style decks. Now keep in mind, this says you may mill the top 2, depending on what you're doing. With Muldrotha, you don't really care if you mill cards, but sometimes the situation says not to. But when it says from anywhere, the land can be from anywhere. That can mean you sacrifice it, like your land destruction stuff. So I wanted to put some synergy in here and make cards that both synergize with Muldrotha and the things you want to do with her. And because I have a sub-theme of land destruction, I wanted to try this. And this one's an odd inclusion. I put it in here because I wanted more token creation so you can block, and because, again, it synergizes with the land destruction and the ability to play lands from your graveyard, and because you're going to keep doing that, I wanted you to be able to at least create something on the board to help protect you. So Zendikar Royal was another one that I want to try out. So hopefully when she tries them out, she tells me how they're working, because I do think they're going to work very well. Artifacts. artifacts, we're going to go, it's not a very thick section, but we're going to go with some card draw with Brainstone. It's the only one I have, so I need more of these because I like this card. It really makes me happy to look at the picture, and I really like the card itself. So 1 to cast, 2 tap and sack it, draw 3 cards, and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. It's Brainstorm, but on a stone or an artifact. Witching Well, same thing, more card draw. Mnemonic Sphere, card draw. Executioner's Capsule is targeted creature removal, all on artifacts. Nevinyrral's Disc. Now, Nevinyrral's Disc is funny because you can just keep playing it over and over again. So yeah, your commander's going to die and it's going to keep upping the cost, but there's a way to get around that, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Not really get around it. The mana cost, this deck is mana intensive, so I have a way to create a lot of mana. So, and then of course you got a Protector because Muldrotha is very targeted. So Lightning Greaves, it gives her haste, doesn't really matter. Shroud is pretty much what you're looking for. You just want to be able to protect her. So those are the artifacts. I've got 1 Planeswalker. Now, Planeswalkers are kind of iffy on this one because you got to have ones that really fit the theme. There aren't that many that really delve into being good in Muldrotha, but I decided to go with Ashiok Dreamrender for a couple of reasons. She fits the colors. Her ability is good, and because she doesn't have an uptick, she will die, so you can recast her. But it's spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. That's important in here because you don't want your opponents being able to search for answers to Muldrotha, or to Graveyard Hate. So one of the biggest banes in this deck is that Graveyard Hate really hurts the deck. So I'm trying to limit the availability of, like, they're going to have to top deck it with Ashiok out. They can't go search for it. That's what I was hoping for with this. And the added bonus is that she can mill cards off the top of a player and then exile their graveyard. So it's Graveyard Hate against other people. Some spells, not many. I have 2 spells here. Buried Alive because you want to fill your graveyard with Muldrotha. And Final Parting because you can fill your hand and your grave. So 2 good spells here. And the last section will be, I'm going to do combos, win cons, whatever have you. So first I'm going to start with this. I put in here Mindslaver. Mindslaver is good in Muldrotha because you can keep casting it and keep controlling an opponent. Remember, you're not just taking your turn at that point. You're actually taking your opponent's turn for them. So you take your turn, you cast Mindslaver, sack it, control the next player's turn. Now, there is not a way in the current build to do this on your opponent's turn so you can keep doing it, but there are ways to do so by making all your spells basically become flash. Blue has that ability. Actually, one of the lands that's blue-green has that ability. So you can do it. I did not include that because I didn't want to be that guy, and I didn't want her to be that girl. But if she wants to, she can definitely tell me, and I will tell her what cards they are. But Mindslaver lets you repeatedly take over an opponent, and then you can use them to do your bidding as well, which isn't a win con, but it can be. I mean, sort of. All right, next. So you're going to notice something here. I'm going to leave Necrotic Ooze right here. Now, if you need to know, actually, let me just tell you. Necrotic Ooze is the catalyst for the next 2 different combos. 4 to cast for a 4/3. As long as Necrotic Ooze is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all creatures in all graveyards, okay? So, when he's on the field, whatever's in your graveyard, if they have an ability that can be activated, like tapping for mana or untapping for some reason, you get to use them as such. So, first combo. I'm going to leave Necrotic Ooze there. First combo is Devoted Druid, Channeler Initiate. This is infinite mana. With Necrotic Ooze on the battlefield, he's in the graveyard. It taps, so Necrotic Ooze gains tap to add a green, and then put a -1/-1 counter on, and these words are turned into itself, rather than the name of the card. So Necrotic Ooze will be replacing Devoted Druid because it is itself, and you can untap it. So you tap it to add a green, and you can give it a -1/-1 counter to untap it, and Channeler Initiate, don't worry about this right here. It doesn't matter. It's the tap to remove a -1/-1 counter, add a mana of any color. You now get infinite green and infinite whatever else you want from these 2 with Necrotic Ooze out. So what do you do with that mana? One thing I like to do is Villainous Wealth. So not only are we taking control of people's turns, now we're taking over their deck completely. Now you can play their deck with infinite mana. Now you can only do that once, and because Muldrotha does not affect sorceries, the way to get it back will be something I have to tell her how to do. But for now, it's basically you got to get your graveyard back into your library, specifically this card. Or there are cards that allow you to shuffle specific cards in artifacts from your graveyard into your library, or put them on the bottom. So to get it back, you can't do it to every player. That's the problem, is it says target opponent, not each opponent, which would have been way overpowered. But that's one combo in one way. And it's not exactly a win con, but it can help you win the game. Now, with all that being said, I said that there's a way for the mana to be kind of... We're mana intensive in this deck, so this combo, these 3 cards, also helps you be able to do all the stuff you want to do for a turn. There is a lot of stuff you can do. You can cast stuff from your hand and from your graveyard, so that's one way that you can get around that, by having these 3 cards in play, or 1 in play and 2 in the grave. It'll help you get the mana you need to cast all the stuff from both your grave and your hand. Next one, and I said, oh, I gotta bring one back here. Another one will be, damn it, Devoted Druid, Soul Diviner, and Necrotic Ooze. So now, instead of adding mana, which you will be doing, you're drawing your entire library, okay? I said that there's a lot of card draw in here. The reason why the card draw is because you're trying to get to your combos as quickly as possible, and this one will get you to a win as quickly as possible. So here's how this one works. Same thing as before. This one, you can tap to add a green and then put a -1/-1 counter on it, which would be Necrotic Ooze, to untap it, and then it puts a -1/-1 counter on it, and then you can tap it again to remove a counter from it, draw a card. So that draws your entire deck, and the way you're going to win that way is this way. Oop, drop the card. Labman and Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. So we know this combo. It's very prominent. A lot of people play it. That's what this deck wants to do. It wants to draw its entire deck just to win. So that's pretty much how I have this set up on a budget. This was a $150 budget, and I'm really hoping that she likes it. I like this deck a lot. I play it myself, and it's fun. She plays in a lot of high-powered, like, versus the Dragon type decks. So I'm not 100% sure how much it will hold up to that, considering that this is more of a fun, but still somewhat competitive because it has tutors and infinite combos and win cons that can come out of nowhere. So I'm hoping it holds up, and I'm sure she'll tell me. So anyway, I mentioned earlier that she has a second deck coming. The theme of it will be Death Touch, and I literally just figured out how I'm going to do it, but I don't know when it'll be done. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or just want to talk about the deck or any of the other decks and videos that I create, you can go ahead and contact me at bluebearsgames.online on Facebook. You can email me at bluebearsgames@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you when I have an opportunity. Or you can leave a comment in the section below, and I'll get back to you in that way. And then if you want to talk further after that, you can go ahead and contact me one of the other two ways. On top of that, if you're looking to help support the channel, there are a couple ways you can do so. The first way is actually just out of generosity. You can go ahead and do some donations to me. And the way you can do that is through PayPal at paypal.me/bluebearsgames, at Venmo at bluebearsgames, or through Cash App at $bluebearsgames. The second way that you could help support the channel, this one actually gets you something for your money. You can go ahead and take a look at all the decks that I've made, and you can make a purchase of 1 or 2 or maybe even 5. I have 60-card decks available for sale, and I also have Commander decks available for sale. So if you're looking at them, you can go ahead and take a look at any of my stuff on the Facebook page or through the Facebook Marketplace. They're all available there. You can see the logo that you need to look for, and all those are available for purchase. You can contact me at any time, and we'll go ahead and talk about how you can acquire one of those. And the last option is the freest of the 3 options. You can do me the favor of subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. That way, when I get to my 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, somebody else will be paying for the bill. You can also like the video. Apparently, the analytics show that the more people who like your video, the more viewed it gets. So that would help me as well. Or you can share it out on your social medias, whatever one you have, and other people will eventually start subscribing and watching more videos. So all 3 options are great and will help support the channel. That is my time for the week. I want to thank you for watching. Please join me again next week for another deck build video, and I will see you all then. Have a good week.